in Newry. It's Eve Earley, Eve from Social Enterprise Neo Ireland, and it's empowering change. And your operation in Newry, you were drawn back to us in Ireland because you went. Your grandfather went to America about 1908.
Yes.
To 1910, your grandmother, they hadn't met at that stage.
Nope.
They met, fell in love, and as a consequence, at another time, you arrived. And then 100 years later, you came back to Ireland. Always felt you were been drawn to us.
I did.
Yeah.
I
You
did.
discovered the need to help folk empower change. That's your calling. That's what you want to do and do well.
It is. It is. I had an interaction in the village where I live, where the way of trying to get me to do something that they wanted me to do was to shame me. And I realized that that was an old behavior that I knew from my childhood. It was an Irish way of being.
Oh, yeah.
But I almost deferred to it. Even though I knew better and I'd had years and years of therapy and recovery and all that other stuff, I almost automatically went back to it. And I started to look at our behaviors in that way as being a consequence of conflict, generations and generations and generations.
Did you find that people were putting you down if you had a great idea for change?
Well, that's a whole other issue, but yes, we do want to point out why it can't be done, as opposed to saying, bizarre idea, how would I make that work? How can I wrap my head around it? That's the part we don't do. And we are marvelously creative and ambitious, and if you don't believe that, look at the Irish in the diaspora.
Yes, we can do anything.
We can.
We run the wagons and the horses around Manhattan, around New York.
There's a fabulous song.
We do great things.
Exactly, the fabulous song, When New York Was Irish.
Yeah.
You know, we did it all.
Absolutely.
And now we're doing it all in Australia, New Zealand, in Canada. And I want to make this place someplace that the emigres will want to come back to, having been inspired by a different way of life. And to be perfectly honest with you, will want to rear their children here because this is an amazing place. Children stay younger longer. I was shocked when I moved and found out kids believed in Santa Claus until 6, 8, 10 years old.
Yes.
That's a wonderful thing. We're grown-ups for way too long.
Yeah. There is, I'm gathering from what you say, that you have a realization of a truth, one of our truths. And the truth is that we are a growing people. We're no longer a pigs in the parlor people. We're a people of the southern regional college that's developing beautiful strands and technological hubs and the like. We're developing the sort of thing you're doing here over on Sugar House Quay in Newry. We are a people who are growing with enthusiasm into a kind of, in Newry terms, a Clanrye Valley, you know, that's our microchip world. We're beginning to do things. Do you sense we are?
I do, and the thing that I want us to take a deep breath and take stock of is what's gone on in Dublin, and to some extent now in Belfast in the tech community. So what happened with a lot of involvement by Irish American folk in the diaspora was the encouragement to bring big tech companies to the island of Ireland. And now in the Docklands, it's grown up beautifully. They've priced themselves out of the labor market. They've priced themselves out of the housing market. As a result, the IDA has given Belfast advantages because now the companies are looking with a different eye to the north. And all that's wonderful. But the quality of life that is uniquely Ireland, that's our sense of village, of community, of connection, is what's in places like Newry.
Can I suggest to you, I'll be devil's advocate for a moment. Are you a dreamer?
I think you have to be, but I'm a 60-year-old dreamer, so I have the perspective that says we'll get there.
Yeah. Do you know that when I was asking that question, my inner voice is saying to me, what a silly question to ask the woman.
No.
Of course she's a dreamer. She is. She's a dreamer with attitude.
Well, that's it.
You'll go with that?
That's it. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I'll definitely go with that. I'm inspired constantly, Rowan, by a teaching that says, ours is not to complete the task, but neither may we desist from the labor.
Oh yeah, yeah, because it's we're kind of workstations on the road to completion,
Yeah.
constantly doing it. Now you mentioned the thing on the Saturday morning, the events on the Saturday mornings, and it finds its origin in two young men of Ireland who had a dream.
So Coder Dojo Nuri,
Yeah.
James Welton is the young fellow whose idea that it was, and he had the support of an investor called Bill Lau. And what they did was use, in fact, the GAA model. All volunteers, let's teach kids to code. So coding is just another word for speaking the language of computers,
Yeah.
of programming. And the sad reality is that we're still exporting our children at the rate of 1,000 a week from this island, 50,000 a year. And there are right now 20,000 jobs at least in software development and programming unfilled because we haven't achieved the skill levels. I have people who want to hire developers and app builders and whatever, and we don't have the people here. We send the work to Eastern Europe, to Asia, to whatever. So here on a Saturday morning, we have children already playing with their devices.
Yeah. When you say children, what age group are we talking about?
Well, Coder Dojo's parameters are 7 to 70. Just bring a
Wow.
laptop and a parent. So, yeah. No,
So-
7, 8, 9, 10.
So continue the story.
And so you get mentors, and that's been a struggle, I have to say. We've tried 3 times now to get Coder Dojo off the ground in Newry, and I have to thank a fellow called Colin Masters who has stuck to it, and another young man called Liam Cooper, who they come and they give their time. And they inspire these young people in a 1.5, 2-hour session to understand that no matter what they put their mind to, they can achieve this result on a screen in 2 hours. They teach them, or model really, collaboration and the fact that it's not hard. The tools we use are all available free online, and an awful lot of young children have taught themselves this stuff at home. But we're encouraging people to come out and do that in
Because
community.
it's an easier, well, to my way of thinking, it's an easier exercise if there is a collaboration. Because you can say, what did you do there? Look what I
Oh,
did. Did you see
well,
that?
Rowan, you
This
know
kind of-
yourself. In Northern Ireland, do we want to collaborate? Because, oh, sure, he might steal my idea. So we do have a cultural thing to overcome here.
Well, you were talking about the export of our young people in huge numbers. But the model you're talking about of creating an environment in Northern Ireland that will beckon to those people to come back. So if they do come back, we're importing a new level of expertise and skill.
We are. But also changed by the experience of having gone away. And I
Yes.
think that's important too.
Yeah, I always say that it's not a heartbreaking thing for me that the young people are going. It is perhaps heartbreaking that they choose forever to stay away.
Yeah.
But if they absorb the skills of the other world and then bring them back, we're all growing. It's a win-win situation.
Well, I think that the other thing we could address is the idea of global Ireland. We live in a global world 24/7 now. It's
And a
not
virtual
as
world
though
as well.
when my grandparents left, they said goodbye.
Yeah.
Our children are on Skype. They're back and forth.
Yeah.
Airfares. You know, we've got a new airline with a 2-hour layover in Iceland. We'll be able to go to the States really inexpensively. But in any event, so it's not that one-way ticket it was at one time.
Yeah.
But what are we doing here to make this an attractive, improved place for them to come home to? I hear too many young people in Northern Ireland say, I couldn't wait to get out of there and I'm never going back.
Yeah.
That's not the way I want this to be experienced.
Other people I've spoken with, it strikes me, too busy to see the nuance in what you're talking about here. There is a kind of a... You're scraping all the nonsense away. You're giving time to the shoots.
Yeah.
And in giving time to the shoots will grow. The growing of the shoots of knowledge, of personality, of endeavor, of entrepreneurship, that growth is creating a hotbed for return.
Yeah.
And in return, there's a flowering. Is that, in
It
simple
really-
words, the dream?
It really is. It's also that by virtue of their having been away, I would do a lot of work with a group called Tangible Ireland, and we meet in Sydney, in London, in New York, all across Crossmaglen, Limerick, Kilmallock, a village, Howth, Dublin, Belfast, to connect businesses, like-minded people, opportunities for us to do business worldwide, for us to be a cog in a worldwide economy. Let's think of ourselves in the 21st century. That's all.
And
Imagine.
Yeah, and it's the way you describe that. It's a perfect model for networking and the development of new ideas.
Yeah.
That's working on the outskirts of Sydney. Let's try and think about that here in Earley, you know.
Yeah.
But you're the only person who's making those connections at the moment.
I'd like to think I'm not the only person, but I will say the upturn, the kind of uptick that we've seen in attitude in the economy, and just I think there's an atmosphere, a bigger atmosphere of positivity. I think people are hearing me in a different way now.
Yeah.
Maybe she's not crazy, or maybe not. She's not as crazy as
But
we
you were
thought
always
she
a
was.
nice crazy, because there was a point you're in the middle of, you know, you need crazy to do wonderful things, to allow yourself the freedom to dream. You always did allow yourself that from the beginning, you know.
Well, and it's
And you were
interesting.
coming back, you were repatriating at a time when we were at the bottom of the pile.
But I think that has something to do with it, because I was also coming at a time when I had been at the bottom of the pile. And I think what I recognized in that shaming conversation that day in the village.
Where did that happen?
In Carlingford.
Oh, really?
And it was a charming, I tell the story frequently, but it was a charming back and forth, because here's the thing. I challenged. I was in the butcher shop. I asked for a cut of meat. I described it. And what would you be wanting that for? I
My
was
goodness.
shocked,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I said, my children are coming. It's their favorite. Ugh, your children will have to learn to eat Irish. And in that moment,
I know the butcher shop you were in.
God bless the
Oh, yeah,
man.
absolutely.
He's no longer with
Oh,
us.
God bless him. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I said, I'll learn to eat Irish. My
Yeah.
guests will learn to eat Irish, but my children will have what they've always had. I'll be in at 2 o'clock tomorrow to pick it up.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that is the next day I got an amazing cut of meat, and I had have a great relationship in that shop
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
because I challenged politely and nicely.
What you were experiencing was a guttural, attitudinal thing.
No,
We're okay where we are.
No, I actually think what I was experiencing was at times cranky, but a good businessman who had all this meat cut in the case.
Yes. Yeah.
It was his task to move that meat.
Yeah. He was moving it.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
But that's another issue of marketing and all the rest of it. The last thing in the world that I would ever do when purchasing like that would be to take the stuff that's already cut.
Right.
I would ask for it to be cut for me. And that's a way forward.
But the way forward was asking, getting the need met, and continuing the relationship,
Yeah.
as opposed to what I often heard was, oh, well, I don't do business in there.
Yeah, oh no.
Well,
that's not
why?
good. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
'Cause,
why?
Monday is different to Sunday and Wednesday different to the Friday. So things change.
Yeah, and could we just assert what it is we want and need? And I do think that politically,
Yeah.
this is what we do.
Yeah.
We go, sure, you'll never change it. Well, have you tried?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you tried?
What we're talking here is the metaphor for a better society.
Exactly.
You know, if you can translate the simplicity of the butcher shop and his willingness to give you what you want and to look at a different way, perhaps a better way, then things can move forward.
But
We
what
do it
it-
in politics, we do it in education, we do it in industry.
But what it came down to, I think, it was my core ego strength to be able to say in that setting,
Yeah,
this is what I want and this is what I'm entitled to.
yeah,
And I'm paying for it. The entitlement's a whole other thing. And I'm paying for it. Now, what we need to do with Coder Dojo on Saturday mornings, I run groups in creativity, is to help people feel confident enough to verbalize, to give voice to a reasonable need, to not be defensive in the way that we go immediately with an argument. How about if we try to hear what the other side is saying? You know, it's like we've been so damaged by conflict, not unlike what goes on in families when people are damaged by the way you interact. Individually, the first person to get better in a family drives the change for everybody else.
I do so hope you're right there. I love that as a concept.
Us getting better, we're just an extension of that family. Developmentally, we need to find our voices. We need to be less codependent. We need to take that model and apply it to community.
And also to have the ability to say no as easily as we say yes. Yes is easy, but to say no, I believe that's wrong, and let's talk about it. That's the important codicil. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing about you coming in amongst us at this time, well, not this time now, we're a few years back, you were also coming at a time when we were much closer to the red-hot centre of the furnace of our troubles, and you were deciding to come to an Ireland that was barely emerging from awfulness over 40 years.
I didn't have any idea of that Ireland. I'd been lucky enough to be coming over a 6-year period with a group that was studying Celtic Ireland. And we studied Grace and Maeve out in Knocknarea and Sligo,
Yes.
the children of Lur and Cavan, Bridget and Cooley.
Bridget and Cooley and
You know,
Falkirk,
and so I was and I had an opportunity to come to Carlingford, and I got on a plane and I thought I was moving to Ireland. No, it turned out I moved to some place called the Border.
Wow.
And my father's people are from Longford, but I was reared by my mother's Sicilian family. I didn't know what that meant. So it was a very long year, and I think the naivete was good. I might have turned on my heel and gone home.
Yeah. But I have to say, Carlingford, are you still in Carlingford?
I am.
Carlingford has a way of growing on you.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, if you ignore the hen parties and whatever like that.
Yes.
But it's a beautiful place.
It is.
Yeah.
And people often say to me, and what would you be moving to this feckin' country for? And I just look at them and say, well, I live in Narnia. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my contribution to Narnia, go along to the Heritage Centre and have a look at the film that's in it.
Ah, it's
That was
gorgeous.
my documentary, an early documentary on Carlingford.
I'll
It's
have
shown
to
there
look at it with different eyes.
Constantly. Yeah, that was.
I will
yeah,
have to look at it with
that was
different
mine at the
eyes.
beginning. And we had great people in Carlingford. We had Joe McKevitt, and we had. And I've written a poem. I must get you the poem of Joe McKevitt, who was the grocer shop in the town at the time. Dan McKevitt is his son in the cafe, and we had PJ O'Hare, and we had Maureen O'Hare, his sister. We had Maura O'Hare, his wife, who's now dead and gone. Maureen's gone. And we had wee Minnie there. There's a whole community of tiny characters, all bursting to have their say. Like Minnie was the most diminutive little woman in the world. But by gum, when she put the finger on the counter, you listened, you know. And that was the way it was. And that's the Carlingford you came to.
Well, and again, how can we own Newry in that way? How can each and every one of us have that pride of place? That pride of place. That's what I'd like to see.
Hold that thought until the end of the programme, because we will examine how we can make Newry an Arnia.
Sounds good.
With profitability as well.
There you
Stick
go.
with us.
Will
Back
do.
in a moment.
Destination Newry.